Welcome back. You're watching The Front Row. We're looking at the university placement reforms. And before we get back to our panelists, I want us to just quickly go through some of these proposals and guidelines for you to just understand where we're coming from with this conversation and give you a chance to also ask questions to our panelists on what this will mean. So we're looking at the university admission guidelines that talk about the dividing in clusters courses with more subclusters introduced, a new criteria to expand study options. And that's what Dr. Homi here has talked about. And more than 50% of secondary school students are not guided in career development. That is what the government is saying. So then perhaps some of these proposals are meant to cure some of the after effects or failures in the whole process of guiding students in picking courses as they head towards the tertiary institutions. So we've seen from law where they're looking at a B for English and Swahili, the languages, everything else remains. Engineering, we're talking about an A minor and C plus. Physics, those are some of the requirements for an engineering course. We are also seeing analytical sciences, a keen on math, physics and chemistry, a proposed change to retain the minimum subject requirement, and agriculture and biosystems engineering also there with some of the requirements, and a proposal to remove English and Swahili as a requirement in this subcluster of agricultural and biosystems engineering. So education, which is seen to be vast and a very key point of concern, the current criteria is a C plane in English, math, and in 2 other teaching subjects. But then with the new proposed criteria is proposing an English and Swahili for C plane in math, B minus in math, and a C plane, I think, in 2 teaching subjects. We'll be expounding on that shortly. Proposed changes also include introducing Kiswahili as an alternative to English. And we're also looking at the current criteria for education being math, A, C plane, and physics and chemistry for C+. And we are also just looking at removing the minimum subject requirements in math for education. And finally, before we get back to our panelists, the Kenya University and College Placement Reports of 2021-2022 says a total of 265,145 students were to pursue degree and TVET courses, and those expected to pursue degree courses were 128,073. Those expected to pursue TVET courses were 137,072 students. But interestingly, 6,617 who attained a C+ and above chose TVET courses, up from 2,632 in 2019. And another interesting figure here of 7,000 students who did not apply to either universities, colleges, or TVETs. Dr. Ahome, looking at this report, which really comes from your organization, 7,000 students who did not apply to either universities, colleges, or TVETs. Is this part of what we are trying to cure with this? Is it a concern?
I would say yes and no, because when you have 700,000 students sitting for an exam, and you have 7,000 not applying, for various reasons, I don't think it's an alarming number. But we have taken the step to find out where are these 7,000, why didn't they apply? In the past, for those who did not apply, we would just offer them courses, and we said, we move away from that, because if you don't apply, there must be a very good reason that you didn't do that. So we've been able to establish that some preferred to just go straight to module 2 and have themselves as private students in the universities. Others have gone abroad. Others have opted to join the military. But we have a number, 178 students who have come and said, we didn't apply. We didn't think it was necessary, but would like to be considered. So I think the most important is reaching out to them and establishing why. Yeah.
This process that we talk about of, relooking at this particular criteria, what are we expecting to see? When does it take effect? Take us through that process.
So what we expect to see, like Professor Mwenda Tarangi mentioned, as we do career guidance, now we expect to be able to, have a very clear direction in how we are guiding the students. If we are telling the students that, yes, you can find a career in agriculture, you can find a paying career in fashion and design, then we are very clear in terms of even guiding them to take those subjects seriously and even sit and perform well in their exams. So this process that we have started will really be useful when we are now placing the students who are currently in Form 4. So from yesterday's meeting, we hope that because we got a lot of more recommendations, and we still expect universities and the professional bodies that may feel there's still something they need to work on. We still give them at least 2 weeks to do that. But there has to be an end to it, because we are looking at placing the students to start their university first year in September. So working backwards, they are sitting for their exams in March. And they need to start making their center applications by then. So by March, we should be done with this process and ready with a new criteria for the students to work with.
So it takes effect in September. The team that's being admitted to school in September.
They will be the first to benefit from the process.
All right. Professor Tarangi, to you, and just listening to what Dr. Ahome is saying here on the need to do this, but also there has been the question of how this particular process will affect the next admission. When we're talking about it coming into effect in September, looking at the quality of education, as a regulator, how do you see this panning out in these universities?
Thank you, Akisa. We welcome this process because what it is doing is simplifying the choices that students will have for programs that they go into, and being given the right kind of subject clusters needed to succeed in that. And you can imagine if I wanted to do a degree in agriculture and I took agriculture from 1 to 4, I will be a motivated student and absolutely have a better experience if I am allowed to go into that with the weight of agriculture being considered when I'm being admitted. So we can see that quality of the students' experience in the classroom and at the university going higher because they are being aligned with what they have done throughout the school and also are able to pursue something that they have a passion for. So we welcome this, and we can see that it will do good for the students given the choices that they'll have and the zeroing in on the specific courses that they would have taken and what requirements there are. I see a win-win in this situation.
Are there any emerging challenges in career development process in this country that we think going forward will be cured by this? How do you see this working?
I think career development is a multi-pronged process that needs to have all stakeholders involved. One is the students' abilities, which can be seen from the way they have been working from primary to secondary school. Another angle is for professionals and people already working to say what kind of aptitudes, knowledge, and skills are successful for this kind of a place. And then for teachers to help discern how they give those students the right kind of tools to succeed. So I can see this as an opportunity to even clarify more for our students and be involved even more in helping students make those choices and succeed in them.
Professor Muluvi, looking at and it's the same question on the course development in this country, because this has been a very keen concern on just how we go about, and especially on higher education in this country, that we are not aligned to the 21st century needs of skill and knowledge to satisfy the kind of new jobs that are coming in. I want you to talk to us about that, because I'm already also seeing some questions on how we will be aligning this to the 21st century needs, the new age needs in terms of the workforce and what's expected in terms of skill at the job market.
Akisa, at the moment, this process will make it easier for the students to be able to choose their courses and to be placed in the courses of their choice. And as we have said, over the last 4 years, universities have been developing new programs aligned to the emerging needs and the 21st century skills. And once we come up with these new programs, then with new subject requirements, it's important that this process is concluded so that then the students can be able to be placed in the courses of their choice. But the universities are working very hard to ensure that our programs are aligned to the 21st century skills in terms of facilitating the learning, and in terms of the way we have designed the content delivery and how we engage in the class with our students.
Will this include coming up with new courses that are aligned to the 21st century needs as opposed to doing the same thing? And I think even Dr. Wahome will come in at this point. But at the university, what conversations are we having to align?
Yes, when you look at the way worldwide, the way the courses are being delivered in universities, even in the Western countries, you find the design of the classroom is also changing. The teacher is no longer the person dictating in front of the class, is now facilitating the learning in the class, and even the way we design the classrooms has completely changed. In the 21st century classroom, you find the teacher at the middle of the class, technology supported, and then the learning is more exciting to the students themselves, and they're willing to participate in that learning. We are working on that, and we will be there.
Dr. Wahome, I'd like you to come in on this. Any new courses that we are considering, because we're talking about ensuring students learn what they are interested in. Does it include?
Yes. Actually, one of the areas that we were looking at yesterday, as we did this review, I would mention a university like Multimedia. Multimedia has introduced a Bachelor of Science in Gaming and Computer Studies, Film and Animation. So these are 21st century courses that we are finding our young people really interested. And when we look at now the subjects that they're sitting for in school, we have art and design, we have computer studies. So when we are looking at the criteria to go into multimedia university, we will now take into consideration that a student who has done well in art and design can go in and do film and animation and gaming. These were courses that, we have had to struggle finding out what are the main subject requirements. But you can imagine that child who is really gifted in drawing and may not be good in mathematics, they can actually pursue a degree now at multimedia, just to mention some of the universities. Yep.
Dr. Tarangi, there's been a lot of push and pull between stakeholders or among stakeholders on what should be the minimum requirements for each and every sector in this country. How do we build consensus, even now that we've started this conversation?
Thank you, Akisa. I think the push and pull can be brought to the center if we all focus on the student. What does the student need to succeed? What does the student need to bring to the program in order to have a better experience and to be challenged to get to the next level? And what does the student say after they have graduated and looking back maybe 2-3 years after their graduation, what kind of experiences did they wish they had that have prepared them for the work that they're doing in the field? So if we move away from looking at our own toughs and looking at how we are performing for ourselves and say, how do we enhance the students' success by looking at the different facets that come with that, maybe then we can start to build that consensus. But I think we are moving towards that kind of stage because with the reforms with CBC, where the student is at the center of it, and the student needs to demonstrate that they're doing the work and they understand what the work is about, I think we'll start to get to see that really what we do as professional bodies, as regulators, as professors, is to facilitate that student to bring out that gift, skill, and talent they have to succeed. Thank you.
Let me bring in Professor Mnuve right now, because the story that we began by running from Shadrach Miti, there was a proposal there from the PS, Simon Abukwesi, that the government is proposing the inclusion of available accommodation spaces and capitation in the new university admission criteria. So then meeting the mark will just not be enough. We're now having a bigger conversation on accommodation and capacity, because it's an issue in our universities. How do we cure this?
I think we will be able to commend it authoritatively when we look at the details, when we get the details from the principal secretary on the new proposal. And once we get it, we'll be able to sit down and look at the modalities so now we can be able to implement the same. Right now, I might not comment on it very exhaustively because the details have not been shared with us, other than what the principal secretary said in the meeting, in the forum we attended yesterday. Is
capacity an issue for public universities, now that you're the chairperson of the Vice Chancellor's Committee of Public Universities? Even as we have this conversation of opening up the spaces in these universities for students, is a question of capacity arising?
No, the issue of the capacity at the moment does not arise, because the public universities alone could have admitted the 128,000 students who scored C+ and above. So we have the capacity to accommodate, to take on board the students who currently are getting C+ and above. Because I think we had declared a capacity of more than 145,000 students, and then the ones who are admitted, the universities, both the public and private, was 128. So there was excess capacity.
I'd really like Professor Tarangi to also chime in on that, on the conversation of on that proposal on capitation and accommodation. How do you see that working out?
Thank you, Akisa. I want to take you back to when I was in college, where our admission was based on bed space, and we had fewer universities then. Since then, we have seen the opportunities expand. And since you asked about 21st century skills and opportunities, we can assume that students can also access good university education through either blended or online or face-to-face. So we have more options now. And I think it is up now to all stakeholders, guided by the ministry, to look at how do we give opportunities to students based on merit, on need, and opportunities that allow us to make university education accessible and equitable to all Kenyans that want to study. So I think there are many, many options that we have. And as Professor Muluvia said, we'll have to look deep into what are some of the proposals and bring the stakeholders, as we did yesterday, to look at what are the areas that we all share and we can move forward that way. Thank you.
The concern here, Dr. Ahome, is that it presents an opportunity for the government to regulate the admission of students because of the question of capitation and accommodation. Do you see this being a major issue?
I really would not want to comment on that because our focus in terms of our mandate, like I started, when I started, I said the focus is the student. We want every student to access higher education. We are looking at 100% transition. So, like Professor says, that's a proposal among many other proposals that we are receiving. And at the end of the day, the board will be guided on the best way forward in terms of looking at every stakeholder's proposal. But at the end, the center is the student and what's best for the student in terms of where we want to take this country.
Back to the question of consensus and the push and pull with professional bodies. And you mentioned that also in that report by Shadrach Miti. Right now, there's a lot of engagement from what we've seen. What happens if we fail to build consensus on the issue of requirements? What are we likely to see? Not to spell doom on the process, but it's a possibility.
It is, but the best way to build consensus is to have people sit at a round table and agree. We have had proposals from different professional bodies. We actually invited more than 20 professional bodies yesterday. And we gave them, like we said, this is a process that began 2 years ago. We've given everyone an opportunity. So I don't see a situation where we will not agree. There was the mention of education, and we know there's a lot of reforms going on in that sector, but things don't happen overnight. So no student, the first thing is that we have to ensure that no student is disadvantaged. Even as we go through these processes, we are very sensitive to ensure that no student is disadvantaged.
Let's go back to what I previously looked at on just some of the proposals on the courses, some of the most popular courses, including education, what we are really trying to regulate here. Take us through what's happening here with these courses when we are minimizing the requirements and looking at what are some of the most popular courses and ensuring that, you know, we create some space for more students to get what they want for these courses.
Okay.
Do you expect that these popular courses will continue to be the most go-to courses for the students?
The question first is, why do you think the courses are popular? It's because of the mindset. People have guided students either based on the courses they think they will get jobs easily or they will earn more money, or in some cases some parents want students to do courses that they would have loved to do and they didn't make it, and therefore you know, guide the students to do those courses that they would have wished to do, and that's where we are moving away from. We find a lot of our students end up in what we call cluster 2, where we have the business courses. But the entry requirement into these business courses has always been mathematics. And yet we have students who are sitting for business studies. So where does business study, when we are guiding students, we have subject selection in Form 1 and 2. And then the career, you know, path in terms of course selection in Form 3 and 4. So if I tell a student to do business studies, how does this subject relate to the university entry requirement? So that's where we are trying to really sort out, so that a student who sits for business studies knows exactly where they will end up, you know, in entrepreneurship, business administration. Again, a student who's taking home science. Previously, in the criteria that we are trying to change, home science was not considered when getting students admission into courses like fashion and design. So we are again saying we have so many technical courses that even help in identifying the students' gifts and other competencies, that if encouraged and they see the end benefit of taking this course, they may feel more motivated.
And I'll weave that in with a question from somewhere here who says, I'm a student in Moi Equator High School. Is it a must for one to have done home science so as to qualify to do art and design? Perhaps you respond to that before you go to the gentleman on the panel.
Asking whether they have to do home science?
One must have done home science for them to qualify to do art and design.
No, not at all. For art and design, I think, allow me just a few minutes to be able to refer to get that.
Okay,
then,
let me shoot another question that I'm seeing here from Anthony from Baringo. Professor Tarangi, perhaps you could take this. Actually, both of you could take this. My question to the panelists are, why must people with diplomas required to start from first year when joining universities for their undergraduate level, yet most of the common courses in year 1 and year 2 are what they did at diploma level? CUPS should consider people who finished KCSE way back before minimum C+ cutoff was set. Perhaps, Professor Tarangi, you should take that on why must people with diplomas required to start from first year when joining universities for the undergraduate level, yet most of the common courses in the first year and the second year are what they did at diploma level? It's a big concern.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Akisa, and thank you for that student who is asking that question, because it indeed is a major challenge for students who have already had some experience in content. And I must say that we are in the process of developing a harmonized process that will recognize the work that has been done prior to wishing to join the university that is not necessarily coming with a C+. And as I say that, I also want to remind the student that at times around the world, each university wants to make sure that the student is cut for the program they're getting into. And there needs to be some coordinated information and communication between where the student is coming from and where the student is going, so that we know what information and knowledge did you have before and how is it aligned to what we expect you to do in our first, second, third, or fourth year of university education, so that we can place you accordingly. But that's a process that is ongoing, and I think we should be able to take care of that challenge once that harmonization has taken place. Thank you.
So it's a harmonization question. All right, let's see what else someone says as we take some of your thoughts. Obunga Apamo says the criteria is a good step towards streamlining university admissions. Most students select careers after receiving their Form 4 results. This is proof that it is more about the grade than and not the original ambition. Thank you for that. The Blessed One on Twitter says, it is a good idea. I'll welcome it. Mathematics has been terrorizing students and making it a primary requirement for even courses that don't require mathematics abilities is uninformed. Okara Maranga on Twitter says that effort should have gone into curriculum review for the Kenyan context. We're going to respond to that shortly as the panelists here. And Benjamin Omogo says, Akisa, why can't I pursue a degree under the COOPS after finishing for a diploma program? It seems absurd that now I have to become a self-sponsored student if we are trying to achieve 100% transition for higher education transition. Dr. Home, that's your question, and we will be getting back to you to respond to this. And as we continue to take more questions, let's bring in Professor Mnovi to the conversation on the interests of student vis-a-vis these requirements and what's offered in school. We're now talking about proper guidance at the high school level before they go into university. A lot of experts have argued that perhaps there should be a process before the exam and after the exam when you already know what you've scored, and you'd likely want to change your mind. At the university, are you seeing students struggle with courses that, one, they're not interested in, or two, they just picked because that's what was available? And how do we deal with that to ensure that students are doing what is in line with their interests and they're well advised way from high school before they get into this to these universities? Beg your pardon.
Yes, Akisa, us in the university system, we believe the current review is a good idea, because the students will be able to choose courses they are interested to study. In the past, you'll find that the students are admitted to programs they did not choose, and instead of settling to pursue the degree program, they start transferring from one university to another, from one program to another. But once you make it easy for the students to choose the courses by streamlining the cluster requirements, then the students will be able to choose the courses which they can be admitted and which they would like to study, so that then we make education more exciting and the students don't struggle because of lack of interest in the university. So I believe it's a good idea, and it will be able to address those kind of challenges.
Remember, as you're watching from home or wherever you're watching us from, we're letting you ask these experts questions with regards this university placement process that the government has undertaken. A lot of questions coming in. We'll be seeking to respond to some when we get back. You're watching the front row. Remember, you can send in your questions and comments at Akisa Wandera at KTN News KE. The hashtag to use is front row. Or if you choose to use our text line, it is 22155. I'll be sampling a number when we get back with the last bit of the show. Do stay with us.
This is KTN News.